Hello everybody and welcome to Electric City Sentai Denzicaster, your somewhat regularly scheduled podcast about the wonderful world of Tokusatsu. I'm your host, Mike Brown. I'll be joined by Ryan McAllister and Dave the Head in just a few minutes. Today we're checking out Godzilla Raids Again. It was the second film in the Godzilla franchise, came out on a very good day, April 24th, 1955. My birthday was April 24th, hence the joke. Although the show may have more in common with some of Dave's ex-wives, and we'll talk about that when we get there. As far as the film itself is concerned, when it came out in 1955, it had a budget of $800,000 and doubled its money at the box office. Over 8 million people went to go see this movie when it came out in 1955, making it the third most viewed Godzilla movie in theaters in Japan all time. Unfortunately, it was also critically panned during its original run, and when we discuss it, we will probably see why. Two of us were dozing, and one of us has seen it multiple times, but all in all, we're going to see if it's worth cutting it some slack. It was only the second time they ever did a Godzilla movie, and it has the first ever Godzilla monster fight in it. So, how does Godzilla Raids Again, or Godzilla's Counterattack, or The King of the Monsters, or The Return of Godzilla, or whatever you want to call it, depending on what country you were in at the time, how does it measure up? Well, we'll find out in just a minute. Stick around. Alright everybody, we are back and we are checking out Godzilla Raids Again, or any number of other names. Just depends on where you were at the time. I am joined by
Ryan McAllister, dude.
Our resident Kaiju aficionado, and
I'm David. I sat on the couch.
Dave the Sleepyhead for the
happened.
purposes of this movie.
It happened. I was there. I saw the whole thing.
Yeah, well, yeah. How much of it did you see on the inside of your eyelids?
I saw me sleeping.
Oh,
I saw
okay.
that.
So, folks, we're not going to go over the whole plot of this movie, but Wikipedia that, because well,
There isn't much.
There's not much of one. Here's the long and short of Godzilla Raids Again. Godzilla shows back up. Basically, two pilots wind up, one rescuing the other one off an island. They spot Godzilla and Anguirus, which is another giant dinosaur-like monster.
It's an ankylosaurus crossed with a porcupine.
Yeah, basically. Spots the two of those. We get to revisit Dr. Yamane from the first Godzilla feature film, came out a year before this. Played, once again, by the same gentleman that played Kanbei in Seven Samurai. His name escapes me at the moment, I'm afraid. But we get to see him show back up. We get a stock footage montage from all the cool monster blowing up shit in Godzilla, the original feature.
Without sound.
Yes, without sound. Well, there was sound, but it was the sound of a projector.
Well, what I meant is,
Yeah, without the actual sound effects or musical score. And we find out that this is a second Godzilla, so there's one thing they did get right. They didn't try to say that the skeleton grew back in the first movie. But we find out that there's multiple Godzillas. This is the second one.
Well, several of you had talked about that, because Chris Brown and Josh Crawford was with us in the viewing, and talked about how they thought no one ever really answered that. And
it's been a while since I had watched the movie. I've seen this one before myself, but
we are talking about, about 3 sentences of explanation.
Yeah, we're talking about a little bit of exposition very early in the feature at that. And so they do at least explain off that the first Godzilla was blown up by the oxygen destroyer. They don't have another one, and the Dr. Cerezo, who created it, is dead. So, and he burned all the notes.
Didn't they say missing?
No, I thought they pretty much said he was dead.
Destroyed, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, they have no way to make another oxygen destroyer.
Plus, if you think about it, if you're going back from the first film, I mean, you saw all basically, I mean, there'd be really no way for Godzilla to come back. I mean, we've seen other incarnations where he has in later films in the era, but technically, I mean, Godzilla's basically just bones laying at the bottom of the sea, along with the Doctor.
And the Tokyo
and there's no way. Yeah, I mean, I understand the Regenerator G, which is, like I said, that's way down the road in the history. And other films where like the heart is beating literally in the bottom of an ocean, and then all of a sudden it regenerates, and here it is. Here you're not getting that, and that kind of brings up a question that I had posed a little bit earlier in the film. with other previous films, Godzilla is a big giant walking reactor. There's radiation everywhere. But now we're dealing with a hydrogen bomb. So what kind of correlation of radiation were we really dealing with? Because you had a lot of people running around, cleaning stuff up.
They have always played really fast and loose with the radioactivity part of the Godzilla mythos, I think.
I cannot speak with any sense of expertise or knowledge, but I do think there's some level of radiation that just half-life's fast.
Oh,
if you think about it, your microwave radiates things. Yeah. So,
I mean, you did bring up the point, and that was something I really didn't think about, much less know, was the fact that at one time you said that uranium, excuse me, was valued more than gold.
The people were hunting it.
Yeah, and it didn't care how the side effects and all that was.
Because it wasn't common knowledge.
Yeah. I mean, you again, later on in several different reincarnations of the films, later down the road, that does become an issue where you do, like I said, see him regenerate. But here, it's just plain Jane. Here they give you the idea that not only is the Ankylosaurus a new creature, but Godzilla is not just a single individual. It is a multiple spanning organism. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not unlike a Tyrannosaurus or a Velociraptor. It's just a type of creature.
Yeah, unfortunately, at this age, movies still have to bow to realism and the knowledge that they have. One of my favorite jokes ever told to me, some guy goes, "Remember the old Superman TV show? How comes he can stand there and let 6 bullets bounce off his chest, but he has to duck the gun?" And I said, well, because the bullets weren't real, but the gun was. Mm-hmm. And the actor isn't bulletproof.
Right.
Yeah, so there you go. And the gun wasn't foam rubber.
That's
they
right.
didn't do that yet. So, yeah, this film, if we stop and think about it, now, and I think you have to cut this film a certain amount of slack. The actual human story of the film is essentially a love story type deal, and it's going to wind up being a love lost by the end of the feature. They really didn't know what they were doing yet.
No.
So, they being
the production staff.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at a movie that is, what did you say, came out in 59?
55.
It came out in 1955, but it was released in the States through Warner Brothers in 1959.
Okay, so that's a year older than my father.
Mm.
Yeah. This film, to put this in some historical perspective, Godzilla Gojira, the original film, comes out in 1954. Mm-hmm. It's a massive success. It was supposed to be a B movie, and it turns into a blockbuster, by the standard of the day. So they immediately, much like present-day Hollywood, greenlight a sequel.
Your intro, you mentioned about how much money it made. Now, is that how much money it made in profit?
No, it doubled its money because it cost $800,000 to make.
Right.
They brought in $1.6 million.
That's not a lot. I mean, in
not
today's
standards,
Hollywood wouldn't consider that to be a very good thing.
But back then, especially after a decimated Japan that was basically
regrowing
itself after World War II. I mean,
Well, think of it like this. A bigger thing in Japan has always been, realistically, not how much money you make, but how many people saw the movie.
Right.
They sold over 8 million tickets to see this feature.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about the original Godzilla. So
there's got to be a lot of money made in the secondary market, like merchandise and T-shirts or whatever. And I know in the 50s that might not have been a big thing, but posters.
Well, if you look at
toys,
if you look at the Japanese movie market, it's a very different experience than what we get here. It's something that we often make light of when we talk about, not on the show, but when we're sitting around before we record and we look at the stuff like the Kamen Rider episodes and whatnot. When they go to do when they go to have the movie come out for that year, they always talk about get this present at the theater,
right?
Things like that. Well, they still have programs at theaters in Japan. They still have books and whatnot and these are all things you purchase. They have essentially souvenir stands at the theaters. So that's a part of it. Even then, I would imagine. But yeah, this film here got greenlit quickly. Was produced and released within a year of the original feature, Gojira. And by 1959, it does get released to the United States. Godzilla King of the Monsters. Godzilla King of the Monsters came out in the U.S. in 1954. So about 5 years, not 1956. About 3 years later, this movie actually does come out in the States under the title Gigantus the Fire Monster and is basically butchered.
Yeah, basically what they did was they thought that they would basically take Godzilla, they would strip the name from him, they would take his iconic roar, strip that, and create a brand new, totally what they thought, brand new horror movie with two gigantic new monsters.
And part of the idea originally was that they actually got the Godzilla and Angela suits from this movie. Those were sent to the U.S. to film new scenes.
Yeah, Toho said go right ahead.
So
we'll ship it to you, and they got them in here. But I think in the long run, if they had really thought about that, they probably would have been like, hold on, guys.
They were trying to. It was in many ways that's the genesis of Saban's Power Rangers, where the American production company got the suits, would have shot their own footage, and inserted it to complete a totally new thing from the original footage. Didn't work out that way.
Because you've got Godzilla running around with the same iconic roar.
The case.
It's
right there. Okay, cool.
You've got Godzilla running around with the same iconic roar, but it's now been changed out. You've got the roar from Anguillus and Godzilla both being the same. Your dubs, the people who actually, the English actors who dubbed in, one of them, for those of you who don't know, was actually George Takei. He actually has a very good storyline to tell about his part in dubbing of the Takei. Sorry, Takei.
And to quote his own joke, Takei, it rhymes with gay.
Okay, but he does have a very good story about his time doing that too.
The part of the reason, and the reason they changed the roar, they don't actually completely flip them. Though they do morph a lot of Angulus's roar into Godzilla's, because the idea is supposed to be they're the same species and that they're territorial. If you do go out and seek out this movie, I'm not sure why you would, but if you do, it does come in this collection. It's the Godzilla Collection Volume 1. You can also buy it by itself. When you buy it, you actually get both versions of the movie, so you can actually watch Gigantus the Fire Monster. And the best part of watching Gigantus the Fire Monster is there's a commentary on that track where they basically just rip it to shreds.
Yeah.
So let's actually talk about the movie, because we've talked about kind of the background of whatnot behind it. We've given some of the story. We see our first giant monster fight ever. We see Godzilla versus Anguirus, and God bless him, the Benny Hill theme started going through my head when we were watching it.
Now, I've seen some giant monster battles and a few things here and there with Godzilla, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, would it have made a difference if this had been the first one I ever saw? And I have to say, personally, probably not. While I was sitting there watching the movie, the only thing I could think of was, this isn't art. The first one was art. The first one was a culture piece.
Yeah.
I mean, you can look at it and you can nitpick it, but at the same time, if you're watching it with an open heart or open mind, whichever way you want to look at it, you can see what they're doing.
It actually is an allegory.
This is an entertainment piece at best that's cashing in on a good first movie.
Thank you.
This was a cash grab, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it suffers for it.
The actual action with the monsters, I liken what we see in this one closer to some early Ultraman.
Yeah.
No big surprise, Eiji Tsuburaya, who creates Ultraman and his studio masterminded that series all the way to this day. He was the effects supervisor on the original Godzilla and on this one. One of the techniques that makes the Godzilla monster fights so unique and gives it a sense of realism, as much realism as you can give two guys in foam rubber suits, is they slow the footage down to give them weight.
Yeah, to make you think that when Godzilla's crushing a tank, it's not just you kicking a can down the road. It's literally a massive multi-ton animal destroying a very incredibly indestructible piece of hardware.
Yeah, because the realistics of it is it's a dude in a foam rubber suit stepping on a plastic model kit. So you slow the footage down to give a sense of weight and such to it. They don't do that in Ultraman very often.
No, not very
and they sure didn't do it here.
I guess another way to say it is that it respects gravity.
Yeah, it really does. And in this
because
film,
it does look goofy in this one when they're...
Yeah, they sped everything up.
It's like a two cats fighting, pretty much, in a way. Except you just with two cats, it's super fast and you very rarely see.
Except these cats only have like 14 moving joints.
Yeah, I mean, it moves really quick. I mean, you get to see aspects that you would normally think the two monsters would do, which is you see a lot of debris flying, you see a lot of stuff going on, but it's like this.
Pretty much.
When it should be like this and this.
And you understand that the grasping motions and stuff like that are going to be hard to copy, but so some of the was it puppetry in it?
They had puppetry in it, but this came to mind. We're comparing this, but if we go back to, let's say, the original Universal's Kong, where they did do puppetry, they did do slow motion. Yeah, they didn't get into
it's all stop motion.
Stop motion, excuse me. But in comparison to some of the props between the two films, are we really being a little bit too nitpicky?
I don't know. I never watched King Kong.
We got to get you to see that one. It's a good classic film.
I'll give it a shot. I'm just.
My thing looking at this is, in the first Godzilla feature, they get it right.
Yeah.
Because they actually respect gravity.
Plus, in this one, and I can't believe I'm fixing to say this, but for the Godzilla movie, sometimes you shouldn't see Godzilla. I know we've talked about it, when in one of the versions we watched, you could only see part of Godzilla as he's moving through the city. It makes him a threat.
84.
It makes him dangerous. Yeah. This one, he looks goofy.
The worst thing this one does for Godzilla, in my opinion, is basically the end of the feature.
What, bury him in ice?
Well, no, but the lead up to it. I don't know if you were asleep during this part or not.
Probably.
Anguirus and Godzilla fight about halfway through the movie.
Yeah, I saw that part.
Godzilla wins.
Yeah, by basically biting through his neck and choking him out and killing him.
Dumps Anguirus' body in a river.
And then sets it on fire.
Sets it on fire, like so many gangsters. And...
Osaka.
Wrong gangster. But anyway.
That's where they were.
And then basically Godzilla just heads out to sea, and that should be the end of it.
And if it's any other Godzilla movie ever made, that's the end of the movie. But
not this case.
No. Now they chase him down basically to an Arctic island, and they're going to encase him in ice.
Okay, so that's where I saw where they sent the human cast to Hokkaido because they had to work, and they had a fish factory up there.
Yeah, that was after all that destruction that went on between...
And so while they're going to rebuild it at Osaka, the main character and some other the people around them characters are going to go there.
Yeah.
So somewhere between Hokkaido and Missiling the Mountain... I went to sleep. So why did they...
So because Godzilla is a threat, he needs to be dealt with.
So they lure him up there, or he's already up there?
He actually just goes there.
He just goes there. He's leaving.
Oh,
and they follow him.
Yeah.
So they follow him to this ice cap, essentially. And the idea is they're going to try to bomb him into non-existence. Well, here's problem number one. Problem number one is they give you a nice aerial shot of Godzilla at one point from the plane looking down at him as he's on the island. He is essentially... If they had put, and I don't know if they did or not, if they had put a black cardboard cutout of Godzilla and just put it on a bed sheet,
it would have looked like that.
It would have looked like that.
Yeah, you're right.
No.
And that is how bad it looked. It did not look like a monster, and it didn't even look like a dude in a suit.
Right. Okay.
So it
was it a matte painting? Because
possibly.
I remember at the end of the movie when they showed
it wasn't like that.
Okay.
Like when the closing credits were
and
starting
they showed the island.
No, it's not like that. It was totally different. Where I think where he's coming up at is because you got to take consideration what the value of money that went into this film. Some of that stuff toward the end never should have took place. Not the way that he's describing it. I mean, that's like taking it's like taking a Matchbox car and let's build a cityscape with nothing but like foam board buildings
and Matchbox cars.
Let me ask you a question. Is the biggest disservice this movie did for Godzilla putting him in daylight?
It didn't help.
Because if you stop and think about it, the 54 movie, you never see him in daylight.
That's not true.
Almost never see him in daylight. If you see him in daylight, you don't see all of him.
No, you don't see all of him. And that may be a very good observation.
When you get the big full body shot, it's always at night and there's always smoke.
The daylight scene, he comes up over the mountain, didn't he?
Yeah, you saw was basically from here up.
I remember that.
Because
I can agree with that. I think so. But then how because here's the deal: you when they started their fight between the two of them, it was night because you had the whole storyline of all right, city's got to go dark. We're going to
Right.
lure Godzilla, and we're going to lure Genghis back out to sea with flares.
And we did it.
And we got 3 dumbass escapees, and they caused a big major fire at some old reserve tank, whatever that thing was, which brought them both on land, and that's what started the whole shebang.
Because everybody was out at the dance club and stuff at night because they thought they were safe.
Because as you go along, like, what's the next film in line? Well, it's Godzilla vs. Kong. But you've got a different version of the suit. You've got, their version of Kong. And
they're going to be shooting it in color.
Yeah, it's going to be color. It's going to be in the daytime.
I
agree.
I think you guys have a bad time coming at this because you've seen so much other stuff. You didn't watch it in order.
Well, no, I did. I watched everything.
You watched this one?
Yes.
The second? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and from my standpoint, it's...
second question, how long ago was that?
To be honest with you, I watched the U.S. version last night. I had watched this version a week prior to when I brought these films down to him.
He's saying the very first time you saw it, was this actually the second one you ever saw?
No, this was not the second film.
See, that's what I got you
now. This was probably about the 8th film in.
Sure.
And I watched this one, and then I watched Jogera right afterwards instead of flipping them because I couldn't get them any other way than that.
But I honestly do think the problem is that, they got it right in the first one. I think they tried to experiment a lot in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? Because the first one was successful. Now you got the money to play with. But the first one is an allegory that has a legitimate plot. This does not. The first one has inventive special effects, and they are extremely cautious not to expose the wires.
Yep.
I'm saying that metaphorically for the first one. In this one, they literally expose the wires at one point.
I remember seeing them on the planes.
Two shots with the planes, and then when they're blowing up the mountain, you can see where the explosive cap, the actual fire line actually comes up over the fake hill that they built. So yeah.
The only good thing towards the end of the movie I liked is I do like the scenes of them encasing Godzilla, of actually the ice coming down, because the ice itself actually looked good.
Yeah.
Well, that's because it was ice.
But they have him getting surrounded and let me rephrase. It looks good because it doesn't look out of scale with him.
Sure, it looks like large chunks of ice. Well, that's because there's no detail required.
Sure, but you can still screw that up.
Okay.
So because like for instance, the overhead shot, that's my hatred of it. That overhead shot of him, there's no sense of scale.
See, I missed that.
Yeah. There's legitimately zero sense of scale for Godzilla at that point, and that's a problem when you have a monster like that. They respect gravity and establish and respect the size of the creature you're trying to portray. But I like that ice scene. The only thing I don't like about it shows that the humans are ingenious, because it's not the military that does it, because heaven forbid that the Japanese military actually stopped Godzilla ever, except for Godzilla 2000 apparently. Instead, in this case, when they're trying to bomb Godzilla and one of the civilian pilots figures out, oh wait, this isn't going to work, start shooting the mountain.
Right.
And we're going to encase them in ice. They get that and it works. The only thing I didn't like is Godzilla looks about as dumb as a brick in this movie, which we're still on the animalistic Godzilla.
Well, he's kind of mad.
Well, the reason I say is because why doesn't he just fire breath the ice?
Well, he fire breathed one of the planes.
Yeah, he did start shooting the planes out of the air.
He snatched one out of the air.
Which was nice looking. But why didn't he just look down and go...
Well,
remember he was climbing out. I mean, he literally was climbing out of that before they brought that second wave in.
Well, remember near the end where he was up to his head and he breathed and it came down on him. It didn't melt. And I think this goes back to maybe people just didn't understand how radiation worked.
Probably.
And radiation might not melt ice.
Well, there's still a heat to breath. Although, there's also still a point that they haven't really intended atomic breath blows up whatever it hits. It's not
it separates
truly fire
pretty much anything that it touches.
So something
he did set the dead dinosaur in the water on fire.
Yeah. Oh, and they almost killed a crew member during this shoot too. At one point, that we have one of our first shots of Godzilla being dumped into the water.
Him and the other guy.
Him and Anguirus both go in the drink, and as we had to explain to Chris. One thing you have to keep in mind is that suit at that point in time probably weighed about 100 to 150 pounds, and it's foam rubber,
so
and you just drenched it in water.
So triple, quadruple the weight.
Yeah. So that guy needed a crane to get out of the drink.
I want to bring one thing up before you start. We were talking about, or I brought up about the budget of the film, and we were talking about the scale of things. we do have to remember the reason they probably went the way they went to is the simple fact that this would be the very first time ever that Godzilla would be facing a foe instead of it being humanity. I mean, we're looking at Godzilla. This is a monster on monster. So I'm thinking somewhere along the line, that's where they went with the direction that they were going. The reason they went fast was not so they could show the gravity, which is what they should have done. They should have shown the effects of the tonnage of each of the beasts against each other, against the background and surrounding. But instead, what they wanted was that
just kind of showcase the
speed and the ferocity.
Right.
Because if you look at it, there are times where they're both at full speed and they're just waylasting everything, and then there are times where you can see Godzilla and it's real slow as he steps over through the building. So it's a mixed match that doesn't, and agree, it doesn't really work quite well.
I noticed one time when he turned and his tail knocked over the model trees and how the models just stuck to the suit, and I was like, that was one of the times where real life messed up.
Yeah.
Hey, it's like you guys said, high definition television doesn't do this any wonders, but I love The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings films by Peter Jackson. Dude. On a big enough screen, high definition, I can see contacts in the actor's eyes. Yeah. Okay, technology is just going to take away some of the magic.
Oh, sure.
And we're not deadbeating. I don't think we are all in the general trying to deadbeat it for that.
No.
Because we're talking about, it's 2016, folks. We're talking about a film that was done in 1955.
60 years ago.
Yeah. So I mean,
was meant to be seen through a projector on a large
screen,
on a large piece of cloth. Not on an HD TV.
Well, the other side of the coin is that at the time there wasn't anything better.
Yeah,
true. So, because the only competitor at that time really was Universal, putting out their monster films.
Right.
Which was not like this. It was not a kaiju feature.
Most of their monsters weren't super giant.
Right. So likes and dislikes. Well, give me something you like.
Likewise, I think it does fit the genre as far as the chronological order of the way that it goes. What I don't like is there are certain things that, and you got to take consideration, $800,000 for our standard, isn't a lot of money compared, but back then it is. Being, how many years have we talking about separated from?
16.
Go ahead. No, how many years have we talking about separation from World War II?
10.
Oh, 10 years.
10 years. So you're looking at a post-war Japan rebuilding themselves, getting themselves into the situation and where they can look forward to the future, putting out these features. I think could have spent a little less time. Like, give you one example.
Well, the question,
getting all your army members to run around the set to overload to make it look like you've got more than 10 people that originally got off the ship.
The $800,000. Is that the money then, or the money as now? Like, the money would be worth $800,000 now.
I thought it was equivalent to what it would be now. They're stating, if you look it up, that was $800,000, and I can't see it.
It was $800,000. My understanding is it is $800,000 by the standard of the day.
Of this day?
No,
of that
day. Yeah.
Okay. It's $800,000 by the. Here's the thing, though.
Well, we're not in the movie business, so we don't really.
Well, here's two things you got to remember. Number one, they built a new Godzilla suit because they basically build or modify the suit every movie. But the second thing is they had to build a complete second monster.
Well, too. You're also talking about acting fees, production fees.
Well, we're still on the studio system for Japan at the time, so a lot of these guys are paid like deadbeats. Really? Yeah, I mean they're under contract to the studio to do a certain number. They're employees, but you're talking about they had to build a new monster suit. They had to either repair or build a new Godzilla suit. They had to go in, and there's the big scene at the end, so you have a whole set piece you have to design to collapse onto your monster.
May I go out on a limb and go, you got your information from Wikipedia?
Yeah.
Okay.
And other various sources like the Godzilla Compendium and stuff like that.
So what we're looking at is an encyclopedia version of the data. Mm-hmm. We don't know how it's breaking down. We don't know
the actual cost breakdown. No.
The advertisement could be in that price. We don't know.
Sure, it would be. So we're looking at a feature, though, that you said for the... Well, what do you look at this and you think the...
Sold 8 million tickets?
In excess of 8 million tickets.
Yeah. Just in Japan.
Just in Japan, yeah.
In 1955.
Yeah. Correct, during its original theater run. That's impressive.
That's speaking a lot.
I mean, that's just a bad guess. 1 out of 4 people in Japan?
Probably a little less than that.
You know what I mean? 32 million people for that population at that time might not be a bad guess.
Yeah, we'd have to do the figuring and research, but so good and bad. What do we look at this and we see as the bad side?
Bad side, if you're looking for a plot, you're not going to get it. If you're looking for a big monster bash, you're going to get that.
And you're only going to get a taste of it.
Yeah. I think overall, I think our biggest issue, or my biggest issue, probably would be the plot. The way everything was scattered out. I don't care too much. It doesn't bother me to watch a guy and a girl and they have a little romance going on, because you got that in the first film. If you really think about it, the original Godzilla, you've got that going on. Here, it just seems rushed. It doesn't seem like there's been any, I don't know.
It's supposed to be so important.
Yeah.
But it's so lackadaisically done.
It kind of takes a back seat, even though that's one of the main drives of the film. I think script-wise is probably where my argument's going to be. And then second would be some of the mechanics of how the suits and how they did the actual attacks on the city in the fight.
What about you, Dave?
I'm kind of on the opposite scale. My favorite part is what little plot, though, the humans. I like the human stories, but then I seem to have a bad habit of enjoying Japanese dramas.
I don't think it's a bad habit, but you have a habit of it.
I'm watching things that are probably designed for 14-year-old Japanese girls. I admit it. My daughter makes fun of me about it. It's funny.
We often talk about shows that are designed for adolescent school children on this show.
Yeah, but when 9 of your friends like Power Rangers and you're watching,
the Japanese equivalent of Saved by the Bell?
Sure. I'm watching a drama about a 35-year-old woman going back to high school.
For myself, the good parts of this movie I've already talked about. The bad parts of this movie, I don't have enough time. It's
kind of slow and boring.
It's slow.
Says the guy who fell asleep.
Yeah, it's slow. The characters are not engaging. The Final Wars has more of a plot. The special effects in this movie look like a massive step backwards when you consider this is the sequel to the original Godzilla. My thought process as far as this film goes is, if you're ever going to watch it or you're ever going to buy it, you're going to buy it because you're a completionist. You're going to watch it because it is an important historical step for Godzilla.
Yep.
It is the very first Godzilla monster fight.
It is.
And you can see here where the formula starts and why they started working to improve it. So I have no idea what in the world we're going to watch next as far as our Kaiju section is concerned. I will say this. Do you actually own the 1933 King Kong?
No, don't.
Crap. Well, we're going to try and find a copy of it, because that's one that I think would be worthwhile.
Might be able to find it at the public library.
I don't think it's public domain, but they may have a copy up there you can check out.
Yeah.
So we're going to see if we can track one of those down. I'm sure I could probably find it on Amazon dirt cheap. But that's one we're going to take a look at. I think that would be a worthy Toku-adjacent thing to watch. All right, folks, so that does it for this discussion. So do remember, when we come back next time, it's more Kamen Rider Drive. We got to finish that series off. King Kong is going to be somewhere on our list, the original 1933 King Kong. I think it was 1933. Was it 1929? I don't remember. It was it's a very early feature. But definitely an inspiration. It's one of the movies that inspired...
Actually inspired Gojira, yeah.
Well, it inspired Gojira. It inspired Tsuburaya, Eiji Tsuburaya, to actually get in the movie business. So we're definitely going to take a look at that. And don't know when, but we're going to try and track down a copy of it. As far as our next Kaiju piece, who knows? Could be something Godzilla, could be something totally different. Could be a giant space turtle. Not sure yet. But when we do, we'll bring it to you here. Like I said, more Kamen Rider Drive coming up in the next few weeks. But we need your help to figure out what comes after Kamen Rider Drive, because we are closing in on the end of that. We probably have about another 6 or 7 episodes of our show will be about Kamen Rider Drive. After that, if you leave it to me, terrible things might happen. So whether it's Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, Ultraman, Garo, Takara Hero, if it's a tokusatsu television series, I don't care. It could be the live-action Sailor Moon. Pick one. We're going to watch it on the show. The live-action Sailor Moon actually is not that bad. I've seen it.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, you just had that look on your face like, you son of a bitch.
I've never watched anything with Sailor Moon.
Really? You would be William's hero.
Why?
Because he despises Sailor Moon.
No.
But
my sisters weren't into that, and I don't recall it being on television.
It was. But it wasn't.
But folks, we will watch it. You let us know if it's something we can get our hands on, something we can get accessible, and we have to be able to understand it. Raws don't count. It needs to be fan subbed, or if an American release and it's dubbed, then the dub's not terrible. We'll take a look at it. But you let us know. Leave that in the comments below. Share, like, subscribe, all those things you do on YouTube, and you can figure out where to hit us up online on Facebook and Twitter on the screen that comes up right after we're done talking. Yeah. So until next time, I'm Mike.
I'm Ryan.
I'm David.
And we'll see you next time on Denzicaster.